Tell me when.
Okay, started. Hello, Lina.
Hello, how you doing, Susana?
I'm fine, and you?
A little bit stressed as usual.
Okay. Well, we're meeting up to discuss the following topic for English class, Unit 5 or Moral 5, and is deductive grammar, teaching, and learning. Well, I think I'm gonna start with the definition, basically. The
Mm-hmm.
main ways to teach grammar are inductive and deductive ways. So deductive is a top-bottom approach. That it means we're going from a general idea, topic, or rule to a specific information. And we could say this method, the teacher role is pretty active, and she's the one that's gonna explain and say the rules and everything, and then the student basically practices. And this is a teacher-centered method, and some people prefer, some people don't. Okay. And the inductive reasoning is a bottom-up approach. This means this is a method that goes from a specific information to general information. This gives the student like the chance to practice and do some, you could say, independent learning or his own search for ideas. He makes or she makes observations. The student formulates hypotheses, detects patterns, and it draws conclusions. And the most important, the student at this point is noticing. It means the student is taking his or his own ideas to different examples. Okay, do you want to say some disadvantages and advantages?
Yeah, well, first, I would like to mention that I would love um, to work mainly with that inductive approach, but I know it's not, even though it's better for the students, it's not very well, it doesn't work very much for us as teachers, and because of the programs we have to follow, and also we usually have large groups, which, I mean, they don't help. I mean, that doesn't help us as teachers to succeed in our classes. But yeah, I have some advantages, as you already mentioned. Some advantages of the deductive approach is the lessons go straight to the point. It allow more time for practice and application. Many rules can be more explicitly and quickly explained, and it's time saving. The disadvantages I found for this approach are this approach, it's more teacher-centered, as you mentioned. It it tends to be boring. At a certain point of the class, I think it becomes boring. It also it's based on learning rules to practice I mean, to learn the language in this case. So if a student doesn't learn the rule, then he what is going to happen when that student gets or is taken out of the I have an example. What is going to happen, like when students go to the United States and Native Americans do not use rules as we teach rules or grammar rules here in Mexico. So they get lost, right? So I think that's a disadvantage for the deductive approach. Well, on the other hand, talking about the inductive approach, the advantages I found in this approach are when we teach using this approach, students learn meaningful and memorable classes. because they discover by themselves. It also, we used to have active classes, and sometimes or most of the times those classes are interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And we say this is a student-centered approach, but we have two-way communications. I mean, there's interaction between the teacher and the student-teacher, and a student-student, right?
Yes.
Some disadvantages I found about this approach, the inductive approach, is that sometimes the students can get frustrated because they will prefer just to learn a rule. And it depends on the learning style of the students, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the abilities of them to learn the language. Also, I think sometimes the students, if we leave them to learn by themselves, or if we don't teach them the rules, or in this case grammar rules, maybe students will learn, they will reach false conclusions of the grammar rules, right? They will learn it in a wrong way, or use it in a wrong way. And it's also difficult for teachers, because whenever they have to plan their lessons, then teachers will have difficulties, because it's when it comes to select and organize the information or the lesson they will teach, and it doesn't come, I mean, if they don't get the results they planned, then it will be frustrated also for the teachers. I mean, that places a heavy demand for teachers too. What do you think?
Yes. Um, I agree with you. Some students will get bored, or other students won't understand, or they basically would have the wrong idea of the rule. I have a quote from Thunberg that basically says what we just talked about in the beginning. He says a deductive approach is a rule-driven and starts with the presentation of a rule and is followed by examples in which the rule is applied. Like we said, the rule and then student practices. And a deductive approach is a rule discovery that starts with some examples from which a rule is inferred, well, by students, I guess. And I think Thumper is basically well right about it, because that's what the rule is. And I have another mm, author that says some agreements exist that the most effective grammar teaching includes some deductive and deductive characteristics. And this guy is Haight, Heron, and Cole, 2007. Well, I think that's basically what all teachers want. They want to have a deductive method with inductive characteristics, or either way around. And I kind of wrote something like uh, present one example, maybe two, explain the rule, give more examples, and then students can do their own examples. Then the teacher can ask questions, or maybe she can answer questions. And at the end, I think it's basically the the result. The student will explain the rule. This is basically going to give you the result, and you're gonna know if the student understood or not what you are teaching him or her.
Yeah, yeah. I think, as I mentioned, we would like to work with the inductive approach. I mean, but as I told you, we don't have the conditions. We don't have the time, the conditions at schools, and sometimes,
Oh,
I mean, it just doesn't work. Let's be realistic. It doesn't
yes.
work, but we have to mix both approaches, and I think that's the only way, and that's the way we do actually, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think both deductive and inductive sequences are valuable for teaching concepts, generalizations, processes and skills. But the teacher must decide which to select given the learning outcomes desired and the composition of the class. So it has to do a lot with what are you going to teach today? So there's no way to, I mean, we can't avoid including both inductive and deductive, right, during our classes.
Yeah.
And something really important is we always have to be aware of the needs and the interests of our students, because I think I mean, I teach children most of the times, and I like to, for instance, last year I had 6th grade, so I was like trying to learn about the musical types they like, and they were like, teacher, do you know who they are? Really? Have you ever heard them? Or whenever I brought an activity on the projector or on the computer, and I used to relate or look for the music of some singers or bands that I know they like. So we have to bring those things to our classrooms and be interested in okay, if they like this, then I'm gonna take this to the class and try to engage them, and then include the rules and include everything we need to in order to succeed in our classes, right?
Yes. To back you up, I believe every student learns differently. So when it comes to adopt or use a method or concept, it's really hard for teachers to just use one. So we have to take what works best, imply it, and then take a little bit of this or that, like you're saying. Some students will prefer one method and others will prefer the other ones because some students need the teacher to tell them this is the rule, so they would learn it, or so they can be sure of what the rule is. Although I believe inductive method will work with simple grammar structure like the verb to be, I believe the students will always need a teacher for irregular verbs or irregular rules. The teacher will need to re-explain multiple times in order for students to understand. It's, with inductive, students might get the wrong idea, and all students learn differently. Those are like my conclusions, basically.
Yeah, I think that's the information, right? The information we have. I mean, we had like a summary of
So
what we
is that
read
it for you?
about this. Uh-huh.
Is everything? Well, I
Yeah, I
think we are
think,
concluding our Moodle 5.
no, that's it.
Yeah, I think it was okay, and we'll see for our feedbacks and see what's going
Okay.
on.
Yeah,
See ya.
thank you. Have a good night.